Hi, I want to demo making a tileable texture in Photoshop. Now, first thing you want to do is set up your canvas to like 2048 by 2048 because that's power 2 number that's commonly used in texture making and things like that. So first we're going to think about like what kind of texture do we want to make? Is it going to be grass? Is it going to be wallpaper? Is it going to be stone? All sorts of things like that. Now, what you want to be sure of is that you work in the center area like this, right? It's going to click a couple of times with the fill so that it fills that anti-aliasing bit. So I'm just going to make some stones here like this. So a couple of taps with the fill gets rid of that anti-aliasing. So another way to get rid of that is to, I'm just going to close that off. When you choose fill is to turn off it's off already. Anyway, if you click it twice, you'll notice if I zoom in, it gets rid of that, but it does make the edge a little bit jaggy. But don't worry about that for now. If you're really worried about it, you can use the Lasso Tool. Press G and fill it in. Lasso is L, so L. Just make sure you're on a new one. Whoops. G, L. And you don't want to go all the way to the edge, you want to just leave the edge, but not apparently a big border around the edge right like that. I'll show you why in a minute. So I'm just going to do L for lasso, so you can make this shape a little bit different. And once you've done most of it, pardon me, once you've done most of it, you want to use the offset feature. So all of this is in one image, but I want to make sure that I merge this down for now, right? And this is just so that my square takes up the full area and it doesn't just look at the transparent areas, right? It's going to become important. So what I want to do is do filter other offset. Now if my document is 2048, half of 2048 is 1024 on X and on Y. And you'll see that that's shifted everything out to the borders. That's fine because this all tiles nicely, right? But we just need to fill in this other area. So I'm going to start drawing some other rocks. I'm just pressing L for lasso. Make sure it's on new lasso, not additional. And G. Okay, so I'm going to carry on the lasso. I'm just going to be careful when I get to the edge here. I might have to do another offset just to make sure I'm not too close. This is particularly for tiling textures, so more likely for environments or walls and things like that. I'm just going to show you a few techniques that I would use if I don't have a lot of tools other than Photoshop. Oops, so L, G, L, G. So I've got a few gaps here, I'm not too sure how to fill them yet, so I'm going to do the filter offset again. Now it already remembers the last thing that I did, so it's filter offset and it's up there. Only thing is, I need to merge this down, right? And now I can see a better idea where I have to fill in these gaps. So I'm just using L and G. Right, I'm just gonna make sure I deselect everything and do offset again. I think I could fit a little stone in here and maybe like one here like this. Oh, yep, I should have filled it. Okay, so that's pretty much a tileable texture. I can go ahead and fix some little bits using white. So I'm just painting black and white at this point because this is going to be my base. And it doesn't have to be super accurate or anything like that. Just get rid of the little sharp, weird points. Right. Right, so that's the base. If I do Control I can invert it. You can see what's going on in that tone as well if you want to paint in black, if it's easier. Right, that's tileable. One way to test it is to go to Edit, Define Pattern, right, and I'll just call it Stones, create a new document, and I'll just make it 2048 because I'm going to use the fill here. So I'm going to fill with a pattern. It remembers the last pattern, so 100% it's 1 to 1. If I go down to like I don't know, 25%. There we go, it's 23%. You can see it tiles pretty nicely, right? And that looks pretty good. So, okay, go back to that. If I want to do anything else with this, I need to be careful. If I do something like a blur on this, in fact, I'll do a bigger blur than that. Let's just make a copy of it first. Gaussian blur. And I'll put this quite high. Right, if I do something like that and then do filter other offset with this, you get this apparently bad blurring at the edge because it doesn't know what's happening on the other side. It's only blurring itself out to like the edge. Now a way around that is to copy your image and make a document 3 times the size. So 3 times 2040 is 6, 1, 3, 4, I think. Let's just do the calculator. So 2048 times 3, 6144. Okay, math's not good. So 6144, 6144. And then you can set the grid. The highest you can set the grid is to 512. So I'll just turn my grid on and then paste that. And there it's landed in the middle, right? So I'm just going to copy it by using Alt and Shift until it snaps in place. You're going to want your grid on plus grid snapping on. And to get those, you can go into View, Snap to Grid. And that's pretty much the snap on as well. I've changed a few shortcut keys for those, so don't worry about that. Right. So now with all that in place, you're going to merge visible. You do your blur. So Gaussian blur. Okay. Then you're going to grab that center part. So it's 4 tiles in, squares in. Right. And I'm going to basically just crop that. And I can define the pattern. Define pattern. I'll call this blurred. And now if I do fill with the pattern, or let's do 50%, you can see there's no seam line this time, right? If I go back to this and do the offset thing, filter other offset, 1024, you can see, and the reason for that is that it knew the neighboring pixels, it knew that these were a copy of it, whatever, but it knew how to blur those edges better. So I've got a blurry version and I've got a strong version. Right, I'm going to take this blurry version and I'm going to do Control L and levels adjust this middle part up and the top part down. down like that, and that gives me this kind of bevelly effect. You can play with these values to get something that you like, you know, soft or harsh, right? And you can imagine this is like a height map in a way. Now you can bring this into like Substance Painter and see how it looks and start painting things up. You might also want to make a curvature map of this, so what I'm going to do is copy it and do filter, other, high pass. And I think if you set it something like that, maybe about 50 pixels, right? It gives you a kind of curvature map. You can see it kind of highlights the edge, and then everything else is kind of dip, and you can play with the levels of that as well, right? And if I do filter, other, offset, hopefully, yeah, so you see the problem again's came up. Now when that problem comes up, you have to copy the image and just check it in a bigger document. So was that 6144? Gonna paste that in there. I think it might, the damage might already have been done to this. Yeah, you can see it's already messed it up. So the only way to do that is to bring in the blurred version, because it's at a certain point of the process it doesn't know what those edges are when it's doing the high pass. Merge visible, right? And now if I do high pass 50, then I grab the center area. It knows, it's known how to deal with these edges now because it needed the neighboring pixel. So now I can crop that and turn off this. And if I do filter, other, offset, that's now working correctly. So we got this kind of curvature looking thing, and if you wanted to paint this, you could then, let's see, I'll just unlock that. What I'm going to do with this layer is use black and white, right? Black and white. I go to filter, render, clouds. Right, it's giving me all this kind of noise and stuff. That's fine. That's what I want. So I'm just going to drag that below, and I'm going to change this to overlay. And you can see it kind of breaks through a bit. But I want to play with these colors a bit more, so I'm going to, in the layer above this, adjustment layer, I'm going to choose gradient map. And what this is doing, it's saying, what am I going to change the values that are dark to, and what am I going to change the values that are light to. So if I change this to like red and this to yellow, it's changed the, I don't know what direction that is, it might be that way, but it's changed the direction of the tones. It's changed the tones of these. If it's dark, it's red. If it's light, it's yellow. Right? So that's one thing you can do. You can then bring this one in, and you can play the values of that, invert it, turn it into a multiply, bring that back up, and you got this kind of lava effect if you want. I can then copy that curvature one back up, and then, you know, try different modes to see what looks good. So I think that looks good, but it just needs more levels adjustment. So I'm just going to play with the levels a bit, and you know, you can get something like that, and that's all tileable. Might not look great at this point, but you can play with the gradient ramp, play with these colors a bit more. Throw in some extra colors. Because we use render clouds, that's already tileable. Right, so you could do something like that, right? That gives you a starting point, and then you can play with the levels, adjust all these other bits as well to see what kind of effect you can get. So that starts to show through a bit more. You can even copy this layer and use it as a mask. So if I was to do another layer, render clouds, and then click the mask and alt click on it and paste that in there, invert it, you can get some kind of effect on the rocks. I change that to I think something like that. It's not quite lava and stone just yet, but you get the idea that you can eventually build up these tileable textures. Right, another thing you can do is, so if you've got this texture here, you can save this off. So I'll just save this off as tileable stones. And you go to something called CPetri Online. Normal map online, that will work. And you find that file. So this one, it loads it in and it gives you this normal map version. Now that's got displacement in it, right? So that actually pushes the geometry. Just turn off rotation. Doesn't need any specular light. We can change the strength of these things as well. You can see it's already given us that kind of curvature effect. You can zoom in on that. I don't think you can tile it here, but it should be tileable. Displacement, ambient occlusion, and this is the normal map. It's asking you how sharp or how blurry to make it. Level, strength. Something really apparent there like that. Okay, and then you can download the normal map. And then I'm just going to do open and then open with. So then when it's in Photoshop, you can have a look at the channels to see what it's doing. Now red should actually be coming from the right, so that's actually looks a bit off. Yeah, that does look off, because red should be coming from the right, green's coming from the top. So what I mean is it should look like the light is coming from the right. Partly that's it. It plays with your eye for a while, it looks a bit weird, but anyway, that's the way that should look. You can levels adjust these as well, just go from tip to toe. and this just gives you the full range. And this one is generally fine. You can sort of tighten up the middle one there, but that gives you the full range of that normal map there. And that should be also tileable, so there's no weird seam line. There's different ways you can test this. A good way to test it is in Marmoset Toolbag. I'm just going to switch back and save that. And if in Toolbag you create a plane, oops, that's to open one up, but if I create an object, generate primitive plane. Alright, and then I add in the normal map. Be here. You can see I can tile this a couple of times. And that's looking pretty good. Change the roughness and all these other things. Not rough at all, very metallic. You see there's no height information to it, it's just a flat normal map, so it looks great from most angles. You could even have a parallax effect. See if there's one here, displacement. There's a parallax there, so I can load in a height map. So I'm load in that same texture in the desktop. I think it was this one. You call that your height. Then it's still very flat, but it tries to mimic the height of things. You can see how that's kind of faking it. Play with where the center is as well. Channel, red channel, object space. Doesn't work too well because you can see it's got some weird distortions to it, but you see it's still, the object's perfectly flat, but it's just, you see how it's doing this kind of distortion type thing, shifting certain areas. Right. But that to me looks a bit broken. Don't know why, but maybe it could be the levels of the height map. Let's try. If I take this, change the levels of it. Usually it likes this to be like a mid-gray. I'll just tone everything down like that. Let's try to load that one in. It likes it a bit better, I guess, but there's still some weird angles to it. So height maps you have to be kind of careful, but this is using a parallax effect. And I don't know if there's any way for that to be higher resolution, but you also have detail normals, so you can have two normal maps. So for example, you could have a noise one and mix it in. So I could take that same texture, download that one there, and have it over itself. Just creates this kind of secondary pattern. It's quite nice. There's also like a mask, so I can use use this as a mask, so only gets seen in certain areas. It seems to be offset though. Oh yeah, there's the offset there, but looks like the mask doesn't actually follow the actually following that very detailed tiling. 1, 4. Detail weight. You see this detail mask isn't really, it's like it's the wrong size or something. That's 3. That's 3. They do look different, these two actually. So I've obviously done something in the process of that. Let's just save. Where's that height map? Let's undo that and save this. Looks the same to me. Normal map. I think a normal map's the one that I did the offset to. Yeah, there we go. So if I save the normal map now, that should fix that. It should normally load that back in. Let's just check this one, save. Yep, that matches that. Save this fresh in the desktop normal map. There you go. So now it's only on the tiles based on the weight there, so you can see how much do you want to see that come through, roughness, and it's quite a nice effect. So that's tileable texture on top of a tileable texture here. It's just two normal maps, one's just mixing in, but it's tiled more. That's all that effect is, but it can create a nice detailed look. Can change the brightness and background things here as well. See how it looks in different lights. Quite a nice look. Cool, so that is how you make a tileable texture. You can go ahead and try anything at all. You want to work in the middle area before you start, working around about it. For example, again, I'll just create another quick one. If you have like a shape like this, you don't want to start painting like that because you don't know, you're going to guess where it comes out the other side. So what you normally do is you merge that down, you filter offset, can then paint this way. You're always just painting in the middle, and then offset. You might want some squiggles here, offset, squiggles here. So you're never ever touching the edge. The offset is keeping everything tiled. Offset like that, and okay, and then knowing that that's tileable, you can either set it to a pattern or export. Save as desktop, and I usually call it make normal map, but I've got this the wrong way around. I need to do Control I, so my high areas are going to be, do you know what, let's just do it this way. Curious to see how that looks. So these are going to be little indents. I'm going to go back to this, click on here, choose this one, and you see it's generated this little normal map. I can go ahead and sharpen it up a little bit, change the levels, strength. Now it should be, I'm going to flip the red channel because it got that wrong last time. I don't know why, but pretty sure that's what it should be. You can try these different blur algorithms. Increase the strength a bit more, and then download the normal map. I'm going to import or open the normal map. Just going to go into the red channel just to check. So it looks like the light's coming from the right, which is correct. So I'm just going to adjust these up a bit, like so, and same with the green channel. So it looks like the light's coming from above with the green channel. That's good. That works for Unity and Maya, and if you want it for Max, you just invert the green channel. So Control I, and it suddenly looks different, right? But that's the way those work because there's OpenGL and DirectX. So this is OpenGL the way it looks. So I'm going to save that as desktop normal map grass, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, back into this here, and I can load in my detail map. You can see it's this little kind of grassy pattern. Now also you can see these kind of artifacts, all these little bumps in this one. There's a couple of ways to fix it. You can blur it out a little bit more, or use some filters. But if I'm just going to close all here. Just going to open this one, copy it, do my document trick. So that's 6144. Because when you do blurring, you're going to lose. You're going to lose the edges if you don't do it this way. You have to do it all the way around. Make sure it snaps to the grid. Because that middle area is the one that's going to get all the benefit from those edges. Make sure I just merge visible, right? And then if I zoom in here, you'll probably see that I can see these little artifacts. It might be hard. There you go. Like, I don't know if you can see this in the video, but there's just a little bit of harshness there. So I'm going to use blur, Gaussian blur, just a tiny bit until it goes away, like that. And I can also use oil paint, stylize oil paint, and that also just helps a little bit. All right. Now hopefully, if I grab this middle area and I trim it, oops, and I do my offset, yeah, I don't see any weird line down the middle, so that's good. So now I'm going to save that as the new normal map. Let's open in here and close that. And the good thing about Marmoset Toolbag is it updates right away. You should see, hopefully. Let me just make sure it's loading the right one. It should look better. Let's just call it something else, normal map 2. It's a lot cleaner now. Night and day. So you get your detailing offset and tiling, so you can get really fine details in there. And again, this needs to be that way. Okay, weird. Right, well that's fixed it. So you can see you can use this mask to keep it in certain areas. Don't know why I had to load and reload 15 times there, but that's the way it goes. So I'm going to load this one in. You can see it keeps it confined to the bump areas. You can go ahead and have a look at that as well. Just make sure. And there's some settings here. sRGB space or whatever you want. Okay, so that is it. If there's any questions, feel free to, pop a little message below. But yeah, that's it. Tileable Textures. Thanks for watching. Bye.